issued, and we went over it with a fine-tooth comb. And I'll say, there were probably about 75% of that report that we felt comfortable as a committee to adopt and include in our report. And I tell you what, 75% in our current political environment is pretty good. So I think there's some ways where we can work together, and I'd look forward to putting down in legislation some proposals that the governor would be comfortable signing into law. So what's the outcome? What are some of the highlights in the report? I mentioned that, again, we looked through the law report. A lot of the recommendations are things that we include in here, and that's things like reducing training hours, where we have a lot more training hours in Michigan than we have in other states. That doesn't make sense. Let's put those more in line with nationwide industry standards. Let's also make sure that it's easier for people to fulfill these training requirements, whether that's expanding their opportunities to complete those training requirements online, virtually, or knocking them all out in one set of time. That we should be making it easier for people to get these licenses, not just creating new hoops and boxes for them to check. But we really thought that we needed to go farther beyond just those initial recommendations in the report, because frankly, Michigan's one of the only states in the country where we require every single sector in license to have implicit bias training. I mean, that is a relic of the DEI era that the governor herself is turning away from. So let's make sure that we go forward and look for ways, again, to eliminate needless requirements for Michiganders to practice in their field here. And, the legislature right now, we're producing this rules report, but let's make sure that these different licenses, we're reviewing the necessity for them and reviewing their efficacy on a 5-year basis. So let's have a universal license for these fees. If this license isn't providing value for the average Michigander, there's no public interest in it, then we should have a mechanism and a forcing reason for the state to look at and review these things. And we also need to look at ways to change our licensing culture in Michigan. I mean, a state like Arizona provides universal licensing for their state. And for veterans already, we provide universal licensing procedures. You actually want to grow our state's population. It's a great way to do that. Say, if you are licensed in another state, you can move to Michigan and you can practice here. Those are some concrete ways where it doesn't take Pauline, you served on the population council. I think that's a recommendation that could actually help us attract some new people to move to our state and help expand our state's population. And then we have some really nonsensical licenses in our state. So you need a license to be a butter grader, you need a license to be a potato dealer, and you need a license to be a plant grower in the state of Michigan. There's no public interest in any of those. It's just a way for the state to grift off of hardworking Michiganders with an unnecessary filing fee. And those are, again, fundamental barriers to entry that are making Michigan a less competitive state. It's part of the reason we've been losing for the last 7 years. And I think that really feeds into what we need to have is an overall culture shift in our state's bureaucracy to see how can we get to a can-do culture instead of a can't-do culture. And that's, frankly, what it's going to require to get Michigan moving again. And again, let's look at some of the key cost drivers in our state. Housing, childcare. You can talk to people all over, from Marquette down to Monroe, who talk about these two issues, making it difficult for them to make ends meet as a family. And both our housing sectors and our childcare sectors have multiple hoops and licenses and departments they have to report to that makes it confusing, complex, costly, and expensive to provide these essential and needed services and to build these types of facilities. So maybe what we need to look at in Michigan is having one-stop shops for permitting. So if I'm a child care provider, I know what one state agency I need to go to work with and engage with instead of 6 different state agencies that they have to work with right now. It's no wonder that we have such a high cost of child care in Michigan, when if you want to be a new provider, you have to work with 6 different state agencies. Same thing with housing. New housing, making it easier for these builders to build instead of having them, have conflicting requirements from one state department and another and trying to hash that out internally. That's a concrete way we can reduce and provide more access to housing in our state. And again, there are what we've seen with this permitting process, what we're seeing with our regulatory is it's just a way for the state to try and rip off Michiganders by putting more fees on them. If you are facing a ridiculous deadline, if you have a permit that in Ohio their permits take 30 days to issue and it's taking us 120, 180 days in Michigan, if you're facing delayed permit verifications, you should get your fees refunded. That's the least we can do, and I think that'll be something to turn up the heat on our bureaucracy, help get that shift and turn it around. And let's look for the least burdensome way to regulate. Let's try to educate before we regulate. Let's try to look for ways where we can find the best possible path to empowering Michiganders and unleashing our innovation. Great example of that is with our state's building code right now. What we've seen is the Democrats in the state Senate and in the administration have wanted our state to go to the 2021 building code, which is going to add thousands and thousands of dollars on a cost for new home builds. Every $1,000 in cost that you add for building a new home, that prices out another more than 3,000 Michiganders from their ability to purchase that home. So these are some of the concrete recommendations that we've worked together with the Rules Committee. I want to thank all the members here and all the different stakeholders who provided input. I look forward to working on this and moving the ball down the field. So, you guys want to do anything? Good. Thank you. Yeah. Any questions?
When it comes to making the budget, I think something that we've heard a lot in committees recently is like, what is the benefit of continuing to fund these departments at the level that they're at?
Mm-hmm.
But the point that you just made was, if you're waiting a long time for a fee or a license to come through, maybe you get that fee back.
Yeah.
For how long you have to wait. So what is like the balance between like funding FTEs and funding the staffing for these departments to meet those deadlines or meet that 30-day window that Ohio is achieving right now versus like cutting the red tape and kind of dialing back unnecessary spending for funding?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first off, we should be looking at the most efficient way, the most cost-effective way to regulate our businesses and to operate our state government. And when we have hundreds of unfilled FTEs across all different departments in our state government, we don't have an FTE problem. We have a government, working for Michiganders problem. And so I think if this is a permit that is not being filled when they have, unfilled FTEs, they do not have an FTE problem, they have a culture of bureaucracy problem, we should be looking at ways to refund those permits. And I mean, that was an idea that the governor talked about in her State of the State. So again, these are issues I think we can work together on.
So beyond the report, what
Yeah. I think what you're going to see, from this report is probably in this report there's hundreds of different bill proposals that we're going to have in there. Some of those will go to natural resources, energy, reg reform, education. I'm hoping that we have sponsors and co-sponsors across both party lines, and I think you're going to see a lot of legislative activity to put this rules in legislation and then that legislation into law. We've had some discussions with the Senate on the proposals. We've had some discussions with the governor's office as well. And I think this is one of those things where the governor talked about it in the State of the State. We've had 5 bills become law this entire year. You would hope something that the governor noted as a priority and that House Republicans are noting as a priority, you'd hope the Senate would be willing to come to the table right now. Great. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.